How does a stranger answer my mom's phone on her birthday and say she is not here anymore? Why did my own brother tell people she was gone while she was still alive and hiding in a shelter? What would you do if your mom looked at you and said she thought you left her too? My name is Rowan. I am 41. I live 3 states away from the town where I grew up. I moved for work years ago and I stayed because the job was steady. I am the kind of man who likes routines. I wake up early, I make coffee, I check my calendar, I answer messages, I keep my life quiet. People sometimes take that as a sign that I will accept anything. I do not raise my voice. I do not argue in circles. I just watch, remember, and move step by step. My mom's birthday was on a Tuesday this year. I had it marked for weeks. I had a small gift already wrapped on my counter. I planned to call her before work, like always. Mom liked morning calls. She said her mind was clearer then. She used to tell me simple things like what she cooked, what the weather looked like, what she saw on her walk. Those calls were our normal. Even when I was tired, I made time. I sent money every month to help with bills. I did not miss birthdays. I did not miss holidays. I did not miss the small, just checking in calls. That morning, my apartment was still dark. The only light came from the stove clock and the street lamp outside my window. The kettle clicked as it heated. I stood barefoot on the kitchen tile and looked at the gift on the counter. It was a scarf in her favorite color. She always got cold in the house, even in spring. I smiled at the thought of her wrapping it around her shoulders and acting like it was no big deal, then thanking me 3 times anyway. I dialed her number. It rang twice. Then it stopped like someone picked up fast. I expected to hear her voice, a little sleepy, a little warm. Instead, I heard a man. His voice was flat, like he was reading a line he had used before. He asked who I was. I said I was calling my mom. He said it was the wrong number. I told him I had called this number for years. He repeated that it was the wrong number. Then he added, in the same flat tone, that she was not here anymore. He hung up right after, like it meant nothing. For a second I stood there with my phone against my ear, listening to empty air. My coffee smell turned sharp in my nose. The kettle kept clicking. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I had missed a step on a staircase. My hand was steady, but my fingers felt cold. I looked at the contact name on my screen, then the call timer that had stopped. I called again. This time, it rang longer. No answer. I tried again. No answer. I sent a message that said it was me, and I was calling for her birthday. The message sat there without changing. I tried a simple second message asking her to call me back when she could. Still nothing. I opened our last thread and scrolled. My last message from her was a short one from 2 weeks earlier. She had said she was tired and would call later. She never said that and then forgot. She always called later. I stood at the counter and forced my mind to slow down. I told myself not to jump to stories. I told myself to check facts. I did what I always do when something feels wrong. I made a list. Who answered, what he said, how he said it, how fast he ended the call, the exact time, the exact number. I wrote it all down on a notepad by the fridge. My handwriting was neat. That surprised me. Then I called my brother. His name is Gavin. He is 38. He has always been loud in a room, even when he has nothing to say. He talks like he is the person in charge. He calls it confidence. I call it noise. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding like I interrupted him. I told him I tried to call Mom, and a strange man picked up. I told him the man said it was the wrong number and said Mom was not here anymore. Gavin went quiet for half a second, then his tone changed into something annoyed and tired. He said I was taking things the wrong way. He said Mom was fine. He said she did not want calls right now. He said she was resting and I should not make this into a big thing. He asked why I always did this on important days. That last part hit me in a strange way. It was like he had practiced it, like he wanted me to feel guilty for asking a normal question. I asked him where Mom was. Gavin said she was handled. That was his word. He said she was with people who knew what to do. He said the house was stressful for her and she needed quiet. He said I had not been around, so I did not get to show up and start making demands. I told him I was not making demands. I told him I wanted to speak to Mom. Gavin said she was not taking calls. He said I should respect her space. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. He said I should stop acting like I was the only one who cared. He said he was the one doing the hard work. I asked again, calmly, for Mom to call me back. Gavin said he would tell her. Then he ended the call. I stared at my phone screen. My face felt warm. Not from anger exactly, from a kind of clarity. Gavin had not asked who the strange man was. He had not sounded confused. He had not sounded worried. He had sounded prepared. I called Aunt Nora next. Aunt Nora is my mom's older sister. She lives about 20 minutes away from Mom's place. She is the family connector. She knows every birthday, every event, every rumor. She also gets nervous when things get tense. She likes peace more than truth. I still called her because she has a soft spot for Mom that never changed. She answered with a bright voice at first, then her voice dipped when she heard mine. I told her I tried to reach Mom and could not. I told her a strange man answered. I asked if she had spoken to Mom lately. There was a pause. Then she said she thought I knew. She said Gavin told people Mom was not around anymore. She said Gavin had been saying it for a while, like it was a settled fact. She said she did not like the way he said it, but she did not want to fight. She said Gavin told everyone Mom wanted privacy and did not want visitors. I asked if Aunt Nora had seen Mom with her own eyes in the last month. She did not answer right away. Then she said no. She said Gavin always had a reason. He said Mom was sleeping. He said Mom had a headache. He said Mom was not feeling up to company. He said it was better if people remembered her the right way. That phrase made my stomach drop again. The right way. Like Mom was a story he owned. I asked if there was any other number for Mom. Aunt Nora said Gavin told her the number changed. She said she felt silly admitting it, but she believed him because he sounded so sure. She said she did not want to be the only one causing trouble. I told her she was not causing trouble. I told her I needed facts. Aunt Nora sighed and said she would check with a neighbor friend and call me back. Her voice sounded small. When we hung up, I could tell she was scared of being wrong. I stood in my kitchen and looked at the gift again. The scarf sat there like it belonged to another life. My coffee had gone cold. The kettle had stopped. The silence in the apartment felt heavy. I opened my banking app. I looked at the monthly transfers I sent to Mom. They had all gone through. The account name was still hers. At least it looked like hers. That did not mean she was using it. It only meant someone had not changed it yet, or had changed it in a way I could not see. I opened my email. I searched for anything from Mom's address. There were no recent messages. That was normal. Mom did not like email. Then I searched for anything from Gavin. I saw a short message from him from a month ago, where he said Mom was stressed and needed space. I remembered reading it and feeling uneasy, then letting it go because I was busy with work and because Mom had still been answering my calls back then. I sat down at the small table by the window. I put my phone face down. I pressed my palms on the wood and breathed slowly. I told myself to stay steady. I told myself to focus on actions. I opened my calendar and clicked on today. It said, Mom birthday call. Then I clicked on tomorrow. It was full of meetings. I stared at those meetings like they were suddenly meaningless. I thought about how far away I was. I thought about how easy it would be for Gavin to control the story if I stayed put. I picked up my phone and booked a flight home for that same day. I did not tell myself it was only for a visit. I did not tell myself I would see what happened and come back. I told myself one simple thing. I would go and look with my own eyes. That was it. I packed fast but not messy. 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, a jacket, phone charger, a folder with my important papers, because I had learned long ago that systems like papers. I added a small notebook and a pen. I left the wrapped scarf on the counter for a second, then I placed it carefully into my bag. If Mom was there, I would give it to her. If she was not, I still wanted to hold something that reminded me why I was moving. Before I left, I walked through my apartment like I was checking the locks. I turned off lights. I looked at my desk. On the wall above it, there was a photo of Mom and me from years ago, taken at a park. Mom was smiling at the camera, squinting in the sun. I looked at that photo and felt a calm kind of pressure in my chest. It was not panic. It was the feeling of a switch flipping from waiting to doing. At the airport, everything looked normal. People walked with coffee cups. A couple argued quietly about luggage. A child tugged on a parent's sleeve. The screens showed flights and gates. I moved through it like I was underwater. I kept replaying the call in my head. The man's flat voice. The way he said she was not here anymore. The way he ended it without hesitation. I sat at my gate and opened my notebook. I wrote down questions in simple lines. Where is Mom right now? Who has her phone? Who lives in her house? Who told people what? What changed in the last 60 days? I did not write feelings. I wrote facts I needed to find. When I boarded the plane, I took a window seat. I put my bag under the seat and kept my hands folded in my lap. The engine noise rose and steadied. I looked out at the runway lights. I did not know what I was going to find back home. I only knew this. Someone had taken my mom's voice away from me, and my brother was acting like it was normal. I was done accepting normal from people who benefited from silence. The plane lifted, and the ground fell away, and I kept my face calm as I headed toward the truth. The plane ride felt longer than it was, not because of distance, but because my mind would not stop measuring time. I kept thinking about the minutes after that strange call. I kept hearing that flat voice in my head. I kept seeing my mom's name on my screen like it was a label from another world. I tried to keep my body calm. I sat straight. I drank water. I looked out the window. I did not start telling myself dramatic stories. I have learned that panic makes you blind. It makes you miss small details that later matter. So I treated my thoughts like items on a shelf. I picked one up, looked at it, then put it back. I opened my notebook again and wrote down what I knew for sure. I knew the number I called was my mom's number for years. I knew a man answered. I knew he said it was wrong. I knew he said she was not here anymore. I knew he ended the call fast. I knew my brother did not sound surprised. I knew my aunt had not seen my mom with her own eyes for a long time. Then I wrote down what I did not know, where my mom slept at night, who held her phone, who collected her mail, who spoke for her at the bank, who told people she was gone, why my brother wanted that story. When the plane landed, I turned my phone on right away. No missed calls from Mom, no message from Gavin, nothing from Aunt Nora yet. I saw a few work emails and a reminder about a meeting I would miss. I replied with a simple note saying I had a family emergency. I did not explain more. I did not want my work life pulling on me while I was trying to hold my family life together. I rented a small car and drove out of the airport lot. The sky was gray and low, the kind of sky that makes everything look flat. I knew the roads by memory, but my hands still held the steering wheel like I was learning them again. Every sign felt familiar and strange at the same time. As I drove, I kept thinking about how this could have happened without me seeing it sooner. That question kept returning, not as guilt, but as a problem to solve. When I was younger, I always thought family meant everyone kept an eye on each other. Now I know family is often just a group of people telling themselves the same story because it is easier than asking hard questions. Mom raised us in a small house at the end of a quiet street. It was not fancy. It was clean and warm. She worked long hours and still found time to cook and listen. She did not talk much about her own needs. She did not complain. She just kept moving. When I left for work years ago, I promised I would not be the kind of son who disappears. I kept that promise in the ways I knew how. I paid for repairs when the roof leaked. I covered the extra bill when the heater broke. I sent money every month. I called every week, sometimes more. I visited when I could, even when travel was hard. Gavin stayed closer. People in town liked to say that meant he was the responsible one. They said he was there. They said he helped. They said I was busy with my big job and my big city, like I was living some easy life with no weight. The truth was simple. I worked because someone had to. I built a stable life because my mom deserved stability. I did not need applause for it. I just did it. Gavin always wanted applause. He wanted people to see him as the main character. He would show up at family events and talk louder than everyone. He would tell stories about deals he was working on. He would say he was about to start something big. Then months would pass, and nothing would change. A few years ago, Gavin told Mom he needed a place to stay for a short time. He said he was between jobs. He said rent was too high. He said he would help around the house in exchange. Mom was the kind of woman who hears, "I need help," and makes space. She did not want her son struggling. She also did not like conflict. So she said yes. At first it seemed fine. Mom told me Gavin fixed a shelf and mowed the lawn. She sounded hopeful. She said it was nice to have someone around. Then the small changes started. Mom began to mention that Gavin handled certain things. He handled the phone bill. He handled online banking because she did not like computers. He handled mail because he said it was messy. He handled appointments because he said driving tired her out. When someone like my mom says he handled it, it can mean two things. It can mean he helped, or it can mean he took control. I did not know which one it was at the time. I asked questions. Mom gave soft answers. She said it was easier this way. She said Gavin meant well. She said she did not want to argue. The calls changed too. Mom used to answer and talk freely. Then she started answering with a lower voice, like someone might be listening. Sometimes she would say she could not talk long. Sometimes she would say Gavin needed her for something. If I asked about money or bills, she would say it was fine and change the subject. Once I heard Gavin in the background, and then Mom's voice shifted. She started talking like she was reading from a script. She told me she was tired and everything was under control. She ended the call fast. I told myself it was just stress. I told myself it was age. I told myself I was being too suspicious. The truth is, I wanted to believe Mom was safe. I wanted to believe my brother was doing what he claimed. That is what people like Gavin count on. They count on your hope. They count on your desire to keep peace. They count on your habit of giving chances. I drove into my old neighborhood and slowed down. The street looked the same in shape, but not in feeling. The trees were taller. The paint on some houses was newer. Some yards looked empty, like people had given up on them. I passed the old corner where Mom used to wait for the bus. I passed the small park where she used to take walks. I passed the place where I learned to ride a bike. Every spot carried a memory, and each memory felt sharp now, like my mind was using them to remind me what I was protecting. When I turned onto Mom's street, my shoulders tightened. I did not need to see the house to know I was close. My body remembered the turns. Mom's house came into view, and I felt a strange sense of wrongness. Not because the house looked destroyed or dramatic. It looked kept up, but it looked different. There were new curtains in the front window. The garden in the small front bed was not Mom's style. Mom liked simple flowers. This looked like someone planted quick greenery for show. There was a different car in the driveway. I recognized it as Gavin's, but it was parked like it owned the space. It was centered, clean, and angled just right. I did not park in the driveway. I parked along the curb. I sat for a moment and watched the front door. I looked for any sign of Mom, a movement behind the curtain, a light flicker, anything, nothing. I got out and walked up the path. The porch steps creaked like they always did. That creak used to make Mom laugh because she said it announced visitors before they knocked. I knocked and waited. No answer. I knocked again, slightly harder. I heard movement inside, then silence. It was the kind of silence that feels chosen. I stepped back and looked at the door. The lock looked newer. Mom used to have an old lock that stuck in winter. I had offered to replace it before, and she said it was fine. Now it was replaced without me hearing about it. I did not force anything. I did not shout. I did not make a scene. I went back to the car. I needed information, and the fastest way to get information in a small town is often a place where people sit and talk. So I drove to a diner a few blocks away. It was the kind of diner with vinyl booths and a bell over the door. The smell of coffee and fried food hit me as soon as I walked in. I chose a corner booth where I could see the front and still keep my thoughts clear. The waitress recognized me after a minute. She looked surprised and asked how long I was in town. I said I was visiting family. I kept my tone casual. I did not want to start rumors before I knew what was true. I ordered coffee. Then I waited. A man from the neighborhood came in, someone I remembered from years ago. He was older now, slower in his steps. He saw me and nodded, then came over. We exchanged small talk. I asked if he had seen Mom lately. His eyes shifted. He did not say yes. He did not say no. He asked how Mom was doing. I told him I was trying to reach her and could not. I watched his face carefully. He sighed and said he had not seen her outside in a long time. He said Gavin told people Mom wanted privacy. He said Gavin said she was not feeling well and did not want visitors. I asked if anyone had actually spoken to Mom. He said most people had not. He said Gavin was always the one who answered the door. He said the whole thing felt off, but nobody wanted to push because Gavin could get loud. Then he added a small detail that stayed in my mind. He said he saw movers one afternoon a few months back. He said it looked like boxes and furniture. He said Gavin told him Mom was cleaning out old things, but he said it seemed like too much for that. That detail did not prove anything. But it fit the pattern. Change happens in steps. Control happens in steps. People do not wake up one day and lose their whole life. It gets taken piece by piece, while everyone tells themselves it is temporary. My phone buzzed while I was still sitting there. It was a message in the family group chat. Gavin wrote that he heard I was in town and that I should stop stirring old stories. He wrote that Mom needed peace and that I should respect the situation. He wrote that if I cared, I would leave things alone and let the people who are here handle it. I stared at the message and felt something settle in me. Not anger, not panic, just a clear understanding of what I was dealing with. Gavin was not acting like a worried son. He was acting like a gatekeeper, like an owner, like someone defending a position. I set my phone down and took a slow breath. I looked at the diner window and saw my reflection. I looked tired. I looked older than I felt. I also looked steady. I opened my notebook again and wrote one more line under my questions. Gavin is protecting something. The next morning, I drove back to my mom's street and parked a little farther down, where I could see the front of the house without being right in front of it. I told myself I was not there to argue. I was there to confirm what was real. I watched the house for a few minutes. A light came on in a side room. Then it went off. A car door closed somewhere nearby. A dog barked once and stopped. Nothing else moved. I walked up to the porch again. I kept my shoulders relaxed and my face neutral. If someone wanted a scene, I did not plan to give it to them. I knocked. I waited. I knocked again. This time I heard footsteps, slow and heavy, coming toward the door. The door opened part way. A man I did not know stood there. He was around my age, maybe a little older. He wore a sweatshirt like he had just rolled out of bed. He looked at me with the kind of stare you give a stranger who is standing too close to your space. I introduced myself and said I was looking for my mom. I said I had been trying to reach her by phone and could not. I said it was her birthday and I wanted to see her. The man told me I had the wrong place. He said nobody by her name was there. He said I should leave. His tone matched the voice from the phone call, flat and practiced. It was like he had been told what to say. I asked if Gavin was home. The man's eyes shifted for a moment. Then he said Gavin was busy and did not want visitors. I asked again, calmly, if my mom was inside. The man repeated that she was not there. I did not push the door. I did not step forward. I stayed on the porch like a guest, because the moment you act like an enemy, people treat you like one. I told him I would wait outside for Gavin then. The man looked irritated, like I was being difficult just by standing there. He told me not to wait. He told me the house was private. He started to close the door. Before the door fully shut, I saw something in the hallway behind him. A small table that used to hold my mom's photo frames was gone. The wall was bare. The space looked emptied out, not cleaned. It looked like someone removed her, not like someone helped her. The door closed. I stood on the porch and listened. I heard a lock click. It was a quiet sound, but it hit me like a clear message. This was not a misunderstanding. I walked back down the steps and toward my car. Halfway there, I heard the door open again. Footsteps came out onto the porch. I turned and saw Gavin. He wore a clean jacket and a watch that looked newer than the last time I saw him. His hair was styled like he expected to be seen. He smiled at me like we were two friends who ran into each other at a store, not brothers standing between a house and a missing mother. He asked what I was doing there. He said I should have called first. I told him I did call. I told him a strange man answered and said my mom was not there. I told him I came because I needed to see her. Gavin's smile stayed on his face, but his eyes tightened. He said I was overreacting. He said my mom did not want contact right now. He said she had a new routine, and it was better for her if people did not disturb it. He said I should respect her choices. I asked him a simple question. I asked where she was sleeping. He did not answer. He shifted his weight and glanced down the street, like he wanted an audience. Then he said something about me being away for years. He said I did not understand the daily reality. He said he was the one who actually showed up. That was the line he liked to use. Showed up. As if calling and paying bills did not count. As if working and sending money was not a form of showing up. As if being loud in the house meant you cared more. I told him I was not there to compare effort. I told him I only wanted to talk to Mom and hear her voice with my own ears. Gavin said he would pass the message along. Then he said I should stop pressuring everyone. He said I was making the town uncomfortable. He said people were talking. He said I should think about my reputation. That last part was almost funny. Gavin had never cared about my reputation before. He cared about control. He cared about keeping the story clean. I nodded and said I understood. I did not argue. I did not tell him what I thought. I let him believe his words had weight. Then I asked one more question. I asked who the man was that answered the door. Gavin's face tightened again. He said the man was a friend who was helping. He said I should not worry about it. He said I was being suspicious for no reason. He said I always assumed the worst. I looked at him for a few seconds. I did not glare. I did not frown. I just watched him. Gavin did not like silence. Silence made him fill space. He started talking again, saying my mom was fine, saying she was resting, saying she was not up for visitors. I let him finish. Then I told him I would be in town for a few days, and I would keep trying to reach her. Gavin's smile dropped. He told me I was not welcome to keep coming to the house. He told me the neighbors would call someone if I caused trouble. He told me I should go back to my life and let him handle this. I said I understood. Then I turned and left. As I drove away, my hands were still steady, but my mind had clicked into a new mode. Up until that moment, part of me had been hoping there was a simple answer. Maybe my mom was at a clinic. Maybe she had decided to take a break from calls. Maybe there was a mix-up with the phone company. Now I had two clear facts. A stranger was speaking for her, and my brother was guarding the doorway like it was his property. I went to the public library because it was quiet, and it had two things I needed. It had internet access, and it had printers. It also had a feeling of rules. People whisper there, people keep to themselves, people do not perform. That was good for me. I sat at a computer near the back. I opened a blank document and started building a timeline. Dates, calls, messages, money transfers, visits. I wrote down what my aunt said. I wrote down what the neighbor said about movers. I wrote down what Gavin said, word for word as close as I could remember. Then I made a second list, separate from the timeline. It was a list of places that could confirm facts. The phone company, the bank, the county records office, any benefit office that might know an address, any medical office that might have a current contact. I did not need all of it at once. I just needed a path. I printed the timeline. I printed the list. I put them in a plain folder I bought at the library desk. I wrote a label on the tab with a pen. I kept the label simple. Mom. I sat there for a long time, not moving, thinking about how Gavin built his control. People like him do not take everything at once. They take one small thing, then they tell a story to cover it. Then they take the next thing. Then they tell a new story. After a while, the stories stack up so high that everyone is afraid to pull one out. I thought about my mom. I pictured her in her kitchen, holding a cup of tea. I pictured her soft way of saying she did not want to bother anyone. I pictured how she avoided conflict, even when she was right. I pictured Gavin using that softness like a tool. The thought made me feel tight inside, but I kept my breathing steady. I reminded myself that emotions are real, but they do not replace steps. Steps are what change outcomes. After the library, I went back to the motel. I sat on the edge of the bed and called Aunt Nora. She answered with a shaky voice. She said she tried to ask Gavin about Mom and he shut her down. She said he told her not to stir things up. She said he acted like she was being disrespectful just by asking. She said she felt foolish and scared. I told her she was not foolish. I told her that if she had not told me what she knew, I would still be stuck guessing. I asked if she had any old documents from my mom, like a copy of a deed or a bank letter or anything with an official address. Aunt Nora said she might. She said she would look. She said she would call me when she found something. I ended the call and stared at the folder on the small motel desk. It looked harmless, just paper. But paper is what systems trust. I did not need to shout to win. I needed to be exact. I also made one call that night that I did not tell anyone about. I called an old friend from college who worked in a legal office. Not a close friend, but someone steady, someone who liked rules. I told him my situation in simple terms. I asked him what to do first and what not to do. He did not give me a dramatic speech. He told me to document everything. He told me to avoid heated confrontations. He told me to focus on getting my mom seen and heard by the right professionals. He told me that if someone was controlling her contact, there were ways to address it through proper channels, but only if I stayed calm and consistent. That advice matched my instincts. It also gave me a quiet kind of relief. I was not wrong to treat this like a process. When I finished the call, I opened my phone and looked at the last message I sent my mom. It still sat there without a response. I typed a new message that said I was in town and I loved her and I would not stop until I saw her. I did not send it right away. I stared at it. Then I sent it anyway. A minute later, I looked at the screen again. Nothing changed. No sign it reached her. No sign anyone saw it. I placed the phone down and folded my hands. In the quiet of that motel room, with the folder labeled Mom on the desk, I accepted something I'd been avoiding. Whatever Gavin was doing, it was not about helping. It was about ownership. And if he wanted to play a game of ownership, I would answer with proof. I woke up before sunrise and sat at the small motel desk with my notebook open. I read my timeline again from top to bottom. Then I read it again slower. I did not do this because I enjoyed it. I did it because I wanted my story to stay clean when I spoke to people who work by rules. It is easy to sound confused when you are stressed. It is easy to jump back and forth in time. That is how you lose trust in an office. I did not want sympathy. I wanted action. Action comes faster when you can explain things in a straight line. I drove to the Elder Services office first. It was in a plain building near other public offices, with a small parking lot and faded signs. Inside, the air smelled like paper and coffee. The waiting area had plastic chairs, a water dispenser, and posters about basic rights and support programs. I sat down and looked around. People avoided eye contact. Everyone looked tired in a quiet way. When they called my name, I followed a woman down a hallway to a small office. Her name was Dana. She looked like someone who listened for a living. Her desk was neat. She had a notepad ready before I even sat down. She asked what brought me in. I told her I was trying to contact my mother and could not. I told her a stranger answered my mother's phone. I told her my brother was blocking me from seeing her. I told her I did not want drama. I wanted to confirm my mother was safe and able to make her own choices. Dana asked when I last spoke to my mother directly. I gave her the date. She asked what changed after that. I told her about the phone call, the door, and the shifting stories. She asked if I had any texts or call logs. I told her I did, but I did not push my phone across the desk. I just told her I could provide them if needed. She nodded and wrote things down in short lines. Then she asked if my mother had any medical issues that might make her more vulnerable. I said my mother was older and tired, but she was still sharp when she had space to speak. I told Dana my mother did not like conflict and often gave in to keep peace. Dana explained in simple terms what her office could do. She said they look for signs that someone's contact is being controlled, that money or housing is being handled without clear permission, or that a person is being kept away from family and support. She said they do not punish people based on rumors. They work from facts, records, and direct contact. Then she said the sentence I needed to hear. She said the best next step was to confirm my mother's location and speak with her directly in a calm setting. She said if my mother was safe and chose privacy, that would be respected. But if someone was speaking for her and keeping her hidden, that was a different concern. I asked what information she needed from me. She asked for my mother's full name, date of birth, last known address, and my relationship to her. She asked for my brother's name and his address if I knew it. I gave what I could without guessing. I told her I could share the house address and my brother's name. Dana asked if I had tried law enforcement. I said not yet, because I did not want a dramatic response. I said I wanted a record that I tried proper steps. She said a non-emergency report can help create a timeline. She said, it does not mean anyone will rush in. It means a note exists that you raised concern, with dates. I left her office with a sense of direction. Nothing was solved yet, but I had a path. Before I walked out, Dana told me one more thing. She said to stay calm when my brother tries to provoke me. She said people who control others often rely on the target reacting badly. She said my steadiness would protect my mother more than any loud argument. Outside, I sat in my car for a moment and wrote down what Dana said in my notebook. Then I drove to the police station. The station front desk had a thick glass window and a small opening at the bottom for papers. A man behind the desk asked what I needed. I told him I wanted to file a non-emergency report about being unable to contact my mother and concerns about her phone and housing being controlled. I kept my voice even. I did not accuse anyone of a specific offense. I said I wanted a record of events and guidance on next steps. He told me to sit and wait. I sat on a bench by the wall. A few minutes later, another officer came out with a clipboard. He brought me into a small room with a table and 2 chairs. He asked me to explain the situation. I repeated my timeline, again in order. I said I called my mother on her birthday and a stranger answered her phone. I said my brother gave vague answers and blocked me from speaking to her. I said I went to the house and a strange man answered the door and said my mother was not there. I said my brother spoke to me on the porch and refused to tell me where she was. The officer asked if I believed my mother was in immediate danger. I said I did not know, and that was the problem. I said I was trying to confirm her location and ability to speak freely. I said I did not want to waste resources. I wanted the correct process. He asked if my mother had a way to contact me. I said normally yes, but now her phone was effectively gone. I said I sent messages that did not appear to deliver. He asked if my brother had threatened me. I said my brother threatened social trouble and tried to push me out of town, but there were no direct threats beyond that. The officer wrote down notes and asked for addresses. I gave my mother's house address. I gave my brother's name. I gave the motel address where I was staying. He asked for my contact information and my ID. I provided it. When he finished, he gave me a report number. He told me it might be used later if other agencies asked for it. He told me to avoid confrontations and keep records of any messages or calls from my brother. He told me if I locate my mother and she is safe but wants no contact, that may be the end of it. But he said if she is missing from her own life in a way that makes no sense, other services may need to step in. I thanked him and left. I did not feel proud walking out of the station. I felt focused. A record existed now. A timeline existed in more than my notebook. My next stop was the county records building. It had a long counter, a number dispenser, and people holding folders. I took a number and waited. When they called me, I stepped up to the window and explained that I wanted to request public property records for my mother's address. I did not say more than needed. The clerk asked for the address and my name. She told me what was available to the public and how to request copies. She said some items could be viewed online and some required a formal request. She explained fees in a bored voice, like she said the same words all day. I paid for a basic history printout request and asked how long it would take. She gave me a time frame and told me to check back. She also told me which office handled document copies if I needed them later. I thanked her and stepped aside. As I walked back to my car, my phone rang. It was Gavin. I did not answer at first. I watched the screen until it stopped. Then a text arrived. Gavin wrote that I was embarrassing the family. He wrote that people were asking questions. He wrote that I was acting like I wanted attention. He wrote that Mom did not need this and that I should leave. I read the message once. Then I took a screenshot and saved it in a folder on my phone labeled with the date. I did not reply. A second later, he called again. I answered this time because sometimes silence makes people escalate, and I wanted to hear what he said while I stayed calm. Gavin started talking fast. He said I was making it harder for everyone. He said I had no right to storm in after being away. He said I was trying to control Mom. He said if I did not stop, he would take steps to keep me away from the house. I told him I understood he was upset. I told him I was not there to control anyone. I told him I wanted one thing: to speak to our mother directly, without a middleman. Gavin laughed in a sharp way and said I was being dramatic. He said Mom was tired of my calls. He said she was done being treated like a task. He said I should accept that she moved on. That sentence did not match my mother at all. My mother did not move on from her children. She was the kind of woman who saved every card and every photo. But I did not argue about personality. I argued with facts. I asked him again, calmly, where she was staying. Gavin refused. He said I did not need to know. He said he would not let me disturb her. I said that if she chose not to speak to me, I would respect that. But I needed to hear it from her, with my own ears. Gavin told me I would not. Then I did something small that changed the tone. I told him I had spoken to offices that help older adults, and I had filed a non-emergency report to document my concerns. I did not say it as a threat. I said it as a statement of process. Gavin went quiet. Then he said I was going too far. He said I was trying to ruin him. He said I was doing this for money. He said I always thought I was better than him. I told him I did not want anything that belonged to him. I told him I wanted my mother's voice back in her own life. Then I ended the call. I sat in the car and stared at the steering wheel for a moment. My heart was beating faster, but my hands were still steady. Gavin's fear had shown itself for a second when I mentioned systems. That told me I was moving in the right direction. Back at the motel, I called the bank where my mother had held accounts for years. I asked the receptionist for an appointment to discuss concerns about my mother's access and contact. I kept it simple. I said I was her son, and I had reason to believe her phone and communication were being controlled. The receptionist asked if I was on the account. I said I did not believe I was, but I had made regular transfers to support my mother, and I wanted to understand what the bank could do if there were concerns. She transferred me to a manager. The manager spoke carefully. He did not promise anything. He said privacy rules limit what can be discussed, but he also said the bank has procedures when a customer may be under pressure or unable to access their own services. He said they could schedule a meeting, and they might require the customer to be present. I said I would bring my mother if I could locate her. The manager asked for her name and date of birth to confirm she was a customer. I provided it. He said he could schedule a meeting later that week. He also said that if there were other people claiming authority, it might be appropriate for them to attend too. He called them interested parties. I understood what he meant. My brother had probably already positioned himself at the bank. He likely enjoyed sitting in chairs and talking like he was in charge. Fine. A room with rules was not where Gavin did best. I agreed to the meeting time. I wrote it down. I saved it in my calendar. After that call, I sat in the motel chair and looked at my folder on the desk. It was still thin, mostly notes and printed lists, but it was growing, and it was organized. That mattered. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Aunt Nora. Her voice was softer than before, like she did not want anyone around her to hear. She said she found an old envelope in a drawer. She said it had paperwork from years back, including something with the house address and a number printed on it. She said she did not understand it, but she thought it might help. I told her it did help. Even if it was old, it showed what my mother's normal records looked like. I asked if she could meet me somewhere public to hand it to me. She agreed, but she sounded nervous. She said Gavin had been calling her too, asking what she told me. She said she felt trapped between wanting peace and wanting to do the right thing. I told her she did not have to fight Gavin directly. I told her she only needed to stay honest with me and avoid promising Gavin anything. She said she would try. When the call ended, I leaned back and stared at the motel ceiling. I did not feel relief yet. I felt the weight of how many people had stepped back and let Gavin fill the space. I also felt something else, quiet but steady. I was no longer guessing. I was building a record, and records are hard to argue with when the room is full of professionals who do not care who talks the loudest. The next day I met Aunt Nora in a small cafe near the main road. I chose it because it had bright windows and people around. I did not want our meeting to feel secret. Aunt Nora arrived with a large purse held close to her side. She looked over her shoulder twice before she sat down. She slid an old envelope across the table like it was heavy. Her hands trembled a little. She told me Gavin had been calling her more than usual. She said he kept asking what she told me and where I was going. She said he sounded polite at first, then sharp. She said she felt like she had to pick a side, and she hated that feeling. I told her she did not have to argue with him. I told her she only needed to keep her own words clean. I asked her to tell me only what she knew, not what she guessed. She nodded and took a slow breath. Inside the envelope were a few older papers. Nothing new, nothing dramatic. Just the kind of normal mail my mom saved. A bank letter from years ago. A notice about a routine review. A copy of an old utility statement with my mom's name printed clearly. The address matched the house. The formatting looked familiar. It showed me what my mom's normal paperwork looked like before Gavin started handling everything. Aunt Nora said she felt bad for not pushing sooner. She said she kept believing Gavin because he sounded certain. She said she told herself it was none of her business. Then she looked down at her coffee and said she could not sleep after my call. She said she kept thinking about my mom alone somewhere, and everyone acting like it was fine. I told her it mattered that she was here now. I told her I was not looking for someone to blame. I was looking for a path. Aunt Nora nodded again, and I could see some tension leave her shoulders. Before we left, she told me one more small detail. She said a volunteer from her church mentioned seeing my mom at a community meal a few weeks ago. She said it might have been a mistake, but the volunteer described my mom's hair and her coat in a way that sounded real. Aunt Nora said the meal was connected to a shelter network. That was the first solid lead I had that did not come from Gavin's mouth. I thanked Aunt Nora and asked her to send me the volunteer's name if she could. She said she would. I watched her walk to her car, and I saw how careful she was, like she expected someone to step out from behind a vehicle and start asking questions. Gavin had trained people to feel nervous. Back at the motel, I called Dana at Elder Services. I told her I had a possible lead tied to a community meal. I asked what the best next move was. She told me in a calm and practical way to focus on verified locations. She said shelters and meal programs keep sign-in notes and intake records, even if they cannot share everything. She said if my mother was in their system, they could help contact her safely. I asked if she could make calls too. She said she could reach out through official channels, but it could take time. She said I could also visit locations myself and ask to leave a message for my mom. She told me not to demand details because staff have privacy rules. She said to keep my message short and respectful and to offer my contact information. So I wrote a simple message on a clean piece of paper. I wrote my name, my phone number, and a calm line saying I was in town and wanted to speak with her when she felt ready. I did not write a long emotional note. I knew staff would not want to handle something that looked like a dramatic letter. Then I drove to the first community meal location listed online. It was in a church hall. A volunteer greeted me at the door and asked if I needed food. I told her I was looking for my mother and I had reason to believe she may have been there. I showed my ID and explained my relationship. The volunteer's face softened, but she did not offer information freely. She told me they do not confirm names. She said they can pass a message if the person comes again. I handed her my note. She accepted it and said she would give it to the coordinator. I drove to a second location, then a third. Each place had the same pattern. Kind faces, careful rules. Nobody wanted to be responsible for giving out personal details. I respected that. I left the same note each time. By late afternoon, I was sitting in my car in a parking lot, staring at my notebook, when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. My shoulders tightened for a second. I answered. A woman introduced herself as a caseworker connected to a shelter intake desk. She told me she received my note through a coordinator. She said she could not confirm much, but she asked if I was my mother's son. I said yes. She asked if I was in town and able to meet in a public place. I said yes. She told me my mother was safe. She told me my mother was tired. She told me my mother had been hesitant to reach out because she believed people did not want to hear from her anymore. She said my mother could meet me in the shelter lobby during a set hour with staff nearby if I agreed to keep it calm. I told her I would be there. I thanked her and ended the call. For a moment, I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. My mind wanted to sprint ahead into anger and questions. I did not let it. I told myself the first goal was simple. See her. Let her see me. Let her feel steady ground again. I arrived at the shelter early. The building was plain. The front entrance had a small sign and a set of glass doors. Inside, the lobby had chairs lined against the wall and a desk with a bell. The air smelled like cleaning solution and warm clothing. A staff member asked me to sign in. I did. They told me to wait. I sat down and kept my phone in my pocket. I did not scroll. I did not distract myself. I watched the door that led to the back hallway. People moved through the lobby quietly. Some looked up at me for a second, then looked away. I understood that look. It was the look of people who do not want attention. After about 10 minutes, a staff member walked out with a woman beside her. It took my brain a second to accept what my eyes were seeing. It was my mom. She was alive. She was walking slowly. Her hair was thinner. Her face looked sharper, like weight had fallen away. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, like she was trying to take up less space. She looked around the lobby, then her eyes found me. She stopped. Her mouth opened slightly, and her face changed in a way I will never forget. It was not a smile, not at first. It was shock, then relief, then something like pain. I stood up. I did not rush at her. I walked slowly, the way you walk toward someone who might be scared to trust what they see. When I reached her, she started shaking. Tears came fast, and she tried to wipe them away like she was embarrassed. She told me she thought I stopped caring. She told me she thought I left her too. She told me Gavin said I was busy and done with her. She said she waited for me to call, and when calls stopped coming to her, she assumed it was true. My chest tightened so hard it felt like I could not fully breathe, but my voice stayed steady. I told her I never left. I told her I called and could not reach her. I told her I came as soon as I realized something was wrong. I told her she did not need to explain everything right now. I told her we could take it one step at a time. A staff member stayed nearby, giving us space but watching. I was grateful for that. It kept the moment grounded. It made it clear this was safe. We sat in 2 chairs near the wall. My mom held her hands together in her lap. Her fingers were rough and dry. She kept looking down, then up at me, like she was afraid I would disappear if she looked away too long. She told me, in short pieces, what happened. She told me Gavin offered to handle her phone and bills. She told me he started saying she was confused and forgetful. She told me he told people she wanted quiet. She said she felt trapped in her own house because everything turned into an argument if she asked questions. She said one day he told her she needed to leave for a while because the house needed work. She said she ended up moving between places, then finally came here because she did not know where else to go. She did not talk like she was making a plan. She talked like someone who had been surviving day by day. The words came with shame, like she believed it was her fault for trusting her own son. I kept my tone gentle and clear. I told her this was not her fault. I told her people who want control choose soft targets, and she was soft because she cared. I told her I would handle the practical parts properly, through the systems that keep records. I told her she would not have to fight anyone in the street or shout on a porch. My mom nodded, but I could tell she did not fully believe it yet. Hope is hard when you have been disappointed for a long time. The caseworker sat with us for a few minutes and explained what the shelter could do. She said they could help with temporary placement and referrals. She also said they can support a person in meetings with banks and services if needed. She said the key was making sure my mom had direct access to her own life again. I asked my mom if she was willing to come with me to a bank appointment later that week. I told her it would be in a quiet room, with professionals, and we would not argue. I told her she could speak, and nobody would speak for her. My mom hesitated, then nodded. She said she was tired of being spoken over. She said she wanted her own phone again. She said she wanted her own keys again. She said she wanted to feel like a person, not a problem. I felt a wave of relief so strong it almost made me dizzy. I did not show it. I just nodded and told her we would take it one step at a time. Before I left, I asked the caseworker what the safest way was to support my mom between now and the appointment. The caseworker told me not to bring my mom back to the house. She said sudden returns can lead to pressure and confusion. She said it was better to keep my mom in a stable environment while official steps moved forward. I agreed. Outside the shelter, I sat in my car and looked at my notes again. The timeline now had a living center point. My mother was not a rumor. She was not a story. She was a person sitting in a chair asking for her voice back. That night, Gavin called me 3 times. I did not answer. He sent a message saying he heard I was asking around. He said I was making people uncomfortable. He said I needed to stop before I caused bigger problems. I saved the message. I did not respond. The next morning, I went to the bank early to confirm the appointment and to ask what my mother needed to bring. The manager told me, in careful terms, that the customer should be present if possible. He also repeated that other interested parties might request to attend if they claimed involvement. I told him my mother would be there and that I understood. When I left the bank, I did not feel excited. I felt steady. I had my mother. I had a timeline. I had official channels already aware. I had a meeting scheduled in a room where rules mattered more than performance. On the day of the appointment, I arrived at the bank a few minutes early. I sat in the lobby and watched the front doors. My hands rested on my knees. My breathing stayed slow. I reminded myself of the plan, not in detail, but in principle. No shouting, no guessing, no messy emotions on the table. Just the truth, placed in the right hands, in the right order. We were called into a small conference room at the back of the bank. The table was clean, the chairs were stiff. A framed poster about privacy rules hung on the wall. My mom sat beside me with her hands folded, like she was trying to stay small. I sat straight and kept my folder closed until the manager asked for it. Mr. Klein introduced himself and explained the meeting would follow bank policy. He said he needed to confirm who was present and why. He asked for identification first. My mom handed over her ID. I handed over mine. He checked them carefully and typed notes into his computer. Then the door opened again, and Gavin walked in like he was late to a meeting he expected to run. Milo followed him, wearing the same flat expression I saw at the house. Gavin nodded at my mom like she was a detail, not a person. He sat down across from us and looked at Mr. Klein as if he was the important client. Mr. Klein asked why Gavin was there. Gavin said he was handling things for Mom and that I was causing trouble. He said I had no standing because I lived out of state. He said Mom was confused and tired, and that he was protecting her from stress. Milo said nothing. He just stared at the table. Mr. Klein listened without reacting. Then he asked my mom, directly, if she wanted Gavin to speak for her. My mom's eyes moved to Gavin for a second. I could see the old habit in her body, the habit of avoiding conflict. Then she looked back at Mr. Klein and said she wanted to speak for herself. The room went quiet. Mr. Klein asked my mom where she had been staying. She said she had been staying at a shelter. Gavin shifted in his chair and tried to jump in, but Mr. Klein raised a hand and told him the bank needed to hear the customer's words first. My mom said she did not have her phone. She said her number was taken from her without her full understanding. She said she could not reach me even if she wanted to. She said she did not feel free to make choices in her own home. Mr. Klein nodded and asked me what I had brought. I opened my folder and placed my timeline on the table. I showed the dates of my calls, the unanswered messages, and the day the strange voice answered. I showed screenshots of Gavin's messages telling me to stop asking questions. I showed notes from my meetings with Elder Services, and I gave the report number from the non-emergency report, just as a reference point. Dana from Elder Services joined us as well. She did not add emotion. She explained, in clear terms, that their office had opened a case based on concerns about contact control and pressure. She said their goal was safety and direct access, not drama. Mr. Klein then pulled up the bank's account access history. He pointed to a change in contact details that did not match my mom's usual pattern. He asked my mom if she made that change herself in person. My mom said no. She said she did not remember agreeing to it. Gavin leaned forward and said it was all routine, that he helped her, that she forgot things. Mr. Klein asked Gavin to provide the bank authority document he claimed to have. Gavin hesitated, then said he did not bring it because he did not think he needed it. Mr. Klein's tone stayed polite, but it hardened. He said the bank could not accept "I handle it" as authority. He said they follow documents, verified identity, and customer instruction. He said that because my mom was present and stated she did not approve the changes, the bank would take immediate protective steps. He explained those steps one by one. He said access by anyone other than my mom would be restricted while the bank completed a review. He said new contact details would be set only with my mom's direct confirmation. He said a fraud review would be opened for the account changes and for any unusual activity. He said my mom would leave with a temporary access plan and a follow-up appointment, with support present if she wanted it. Gavin's face changed fast. He stopped smiling. He told Mr. Klein he was making a mistake. He said I was manipulating Mom. He said the town knew the truth. Mr. Klein looked at Gavin and said the bank does not operate on town talk. He said the customer spoke clearly and the records supported concerns. Then he slid a form across the table toward Gavin and said the bank needed all keys to any safe deposit access linked to Mom's profile, and that Gavin needed to leave the room now. Gavin stared at the form like it was an insult. Milo stood up first, like he suddenly remembered he did not belong there. Gavin stayed seated for one more second, then reached into his pocket and placed a small key ring on the table with a sharp movement. Mr. Klein picked up the keys, placed them in an envelope, sealed it, and wrote my mom's name across the front. He set it in front of her and told her she could take it with her. My mom put her hand on that envelope, and for the first time in days, her shoulders lifted slightly, like she could breathe. Gavin stood up without looking at her and walked out. Milo followed him. The door closed, and the sound was clean and final.